Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today we have with us Linda. Linda Eastburn. I'm sorry, I said Lisa. She's an entrepreneur, an author, a real estate investor, and an intuitive. She's the author of 4 books about living intuitively. She has combined a world of business with the spiritual world of intuition to teach others an easier way. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I think we had a quick conversation before this podcast, and I am just fascinated with intuition because I just feel like it's something that, first of all, people don't understand. Second of all, I think it scares people. And third of all, I think that especially the people that I deal with, a lot of people that have been basically told what to think and do their entire lives, have learned to not listen to their intuition. So I'm just going to jump right in and I'm going to ask you to give us the basics of what exactly is intuition.
Well, I think intuition really is listening to your body because your body tends to be fed a lot of information from your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is taking in information all the time, and consciously we can't process all of that. We're not aware of all that, those little bits and pieces of things that we know, but we don't really know. So our subconscious mind is always feeding the body with impressions. You've probably heard of a gut feeling or just this, I don't know how to explain it. I just have a feeling about something. That's kind of the lightest side of intuition how I would describe it. Now, for myself, because I'm fairly sensitive to my physical body, sort of took that into a little deeper state of understanding to the point where I could have a certain sensation, I suppose, in my body, but it could actually begin to correlate to some deeper understanding of something, where it was an actual dialogue basically between my subconscious mind and my conscious mind. And it goes yet even kind of a little bit deeper when you go into those deep states of like remote viewers and things like that. They were able to, and myself as well, be able to get into even deeper states, to a level where there's just knowing outside of even the physical system. But on the basic level, all of us have this kind of gut feeling, intuition, where your subconscious mind has processed something and it's trying to feed you information by giving your body a sensation.
Okay, so give me an example, like a real life example that
Sure.
you can think of.
Yeah. Let's see. There was, well, this is after I took it probably to the dialogue stage. Okay. But I remember one morning waking up and I'd had a dream the night before. And I felt like, okay, this is probably good timing. I'd been looking for a little shop in this little Victorian town, and I wanted to open up a little bookstore slash gift shop. And I was going to do some of my intuitive work there in order to develop my intuitive work because I was a real estate investor. In my hometown, it was a much larger city, and I wore a very business hat, business suit, and briefcase. That was my daily routine, my daily activity. All of my friends, family, everyone knew me as this businesswoman. So I was trying to open up to this kind of new identity, and I was capable of renting this little store, I hoped, in this little Victorian town, and be there part-time. So I woke up one morning and I had a sensation. This was my intuition talking to me to go that day and look for a little shop. Now, I honestly believed consciously that I would never find this little place, because I had a really low budget and it needed to have a full bathroom with a shower tub or something and a full kitchen. And it needed to have a little nook where I could put like a day bed or something to be able to stay there part-time. This was around 3 hours away from my home, about 2.5 hours away from where I live. So it needed to be convenient for me to stay there. So this morning I woke up, I had a feeling there again, the intuition was kicking in to go that day. I took the drive down to the little town. I took one sweep around the commercial area. I saw this gorgeous little brick building. It had been an old little grocery store, a little community street grocery store, with the big windows in the front, and it had a for lease sign in the window. So I went back around the circle, and this was the days before we had cell phones. So I found a payphone,
Right.
called the leasing agent, and she was able to show it to me in about an hour. So I had lunch, went back, went in, saw the shop. It was gorgeous. hardwood floors, tall ceilings with tin on the ceiling. It had a little counter. I walked around the counter. I was like, oh, there's a sink, a refrigerator, and a stove. It's like, well, there's a kitchen for me. I can cook here. Then I walked back to this back area and a nice little nook back there. I could put a little day bed. It was perfect. There was a door, I assume was maybe a closet. I opened the door and it was a full bathroom with a tub and shower and everything. So all my needs were met in this one shop. I only looked at one shop. I only called one time to look. I asked the price and it was the exact amount that I had declared that I could afford. So everything I wanted. And if I'd not listened to my intuition that morning, I would probably never have taken that trip. I might not have found this perfect little shop in a perfect little location and so I rented it for about a year and opened up my intuitive abilities at that little store. So there's one
Amazing.
example.
And I was going to say, as you were talking, I'm spinning through examples of my life because people, I mean, I listen to my intuition, but I think the biggest example I can think of was one night my kids were taking a bath. They were 2 and 3, let's say two, I think about 2 and 3. And they used to bathe together and play. And I would always run up and down the stairs and watch them and listen and everything else. And it was funny because that was again before really cell phones. So we had the landline phone but we had the cordless, where you could run up. And it was so funny because I ran downstairs and the phone rang and I ran downstairs and something told, it was like something told me, no, 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 no. But the night before, I had a dream and it was the craziest thing that my kids were taking a bath. And I had a dream that I walked into the bathtub and my daughter was face back, eyes open, bubbles around her head. And my son was like just watching her. And I had that dream that night before. So that this time when the phone rang, instead of going down, talking on the phone, yelling upstairs for after 2 minutes or so, are you guys okay? I grabbed the phone, switched phones, went upstairs with the cordless. And in that time, her arm had gone under the rubber mat, the rubber sticky mats. Her arm had slipped under the mat and she was on her back with the water just pouring on her face with bubbles around her head just like in my dream.
Oh, wow.
And I still get goosebumps. That was literally 27 years ago. And I always say that was what literally made me go, okay, this is why we listen to our dreams. This is why we listen when things just come to us for no reason. You can walk by something 10 times, but that 11th time you're like, ooh, I better pick that up. And is that kind of what you're like
Yeah, it
that
is. It's exactly what I'm talking about. And there are times when the very same thing may happen, but you don't get that sensation from it, like you said. And I think that's a very good point. It's the sensation that your body's giving you that makes it the intuitive message. It's not the thing itself that's happening so much. But our body speaks to us, and when we become attuned to that physical sensation, we get a lot more information than we get just by our normal analytical reasoning, logical, conscious sense of awareness. Now, I use that, of course, extensively, but I think when you accompany that with that intuitive impression, you have the best of two worlds.
Right. Now, I did have a client. She asked me because she knew I was coming on here with you today, and she wanted me to ask this question. Where does this tie into like the whole thing about intuition as far as the belief of like we have everything inside of us, all knowing, all encompassing, like when they talk about like the universal knowledge and it's all in us. Is that what that is basically referring to?
Well, you could refer it to that, I suppose. But for me, it seems as if there is kind of this larger connectedness, and I like to look at it as like we're each like a leaf on a bigger tree. And if you follow the life source of that leaf all the way back to the tree, there's a rooted large tree there, but we're all connected to something that seems much larger than ourselves. And that larger essence of consciousness seems to have all knowing, past, present, future. Obviously, you could not have subconsciously have known this was going to happen to your children the next day when you had that dream. Yet some part of you knew this was going to happen, and it did happen accordingly. And that's one of the things that my latest book, Spy Your Way to Power and Success, is about being able to see things, not just warnings like that, but also being able to see opportunities that's set out there. And that's a large part of what's happened to me. I think it probably ties into what you're saying. That kind of goes contrary to what a lot of people believe, as far as, especially with religious beliefs. But to
Hmm.
me, it doesn't tend to contradict that so much, as it is just the same thing as.
Right. Okay. And that's where I kind of fit in because that's what she was actually alluding to is am I questioning my higher power? Is it not a good thing? She was kind of like a little confused and I was like, well, I'll just ask her the question and see where, see where it comes.
Well,
But
I think that I honestly think that it's the humbleness that we have to look at. I mean, it's like I consciously don't know all this information, but there's some part of
right,
something I'm connected to that obviously does. Now, some people can call that God, and I have no problem with them calling that God. If that's, what you want to call it, you can call it something else. It doesn't matter. I kind of refer to it as universal mind because it seems to be all knowing, and it doesn't seem to be biased as to who it gives information to. So I think anyone can access this regardless of your belief system. But if your belief system helps you access that information, then that's even more powerful.
I was going to say I believe that's more powerful too because to me it is God. That's just me, and it is all knowing and it knows future. And those are messages. So I'm constantly listening for messages and hoping for messages. How can the general person out there that is like, wow, I don't really feel like I have an intuitive sense, or, how can I start sharpening these skills? Is there a way that the average layman could do that?
Of course, yeah. A lot of it is just learning how to listen to your physical body, how to feel that system. Some people are more naturally attuned to their physical body than other people, but really learning concentration, learning focus. Those are really helpful things. Learning how to be able to go inside your body and really analyze what you are feeling. That is helpful to be able to learn how to describe things accurately, about what your sensations are. And that's not just an emotion, even though it might be an emotion, it's really a sensation that travels through your system. Now, most of us, as we have lived a certain period of time, we do have a frame of reference of what certain things feel like. Like if you topped a hill and there was a severe car accident in front of you, there would be a sensation that you would feel, possibly, anxiety, some panic, perhaps, some empathy for the people in the automobiles if it looked like it was, an accident that was harmful to someone's health. There are all kinds of sensations that we feel when we experience things. So if you're being intuitive about a subject or a situation and you feel some of those same feelings, you can identify what those feelings are. You can put words to them. You can begin to attach meaning to that sensation. And by practicing that more readily, and I teach that in my spy technique work that I do, but to practice that more readily you will begin to open up to be able to have a dialogue, basically like I did.
Perfect. And then I'm looking at your book behind you, and it's SPY. It's not SPY for the people that are just listening.
No,
It's SPI.
yeah,
What are
S
those
period,
three?
P period, I period. And it
Yep.
stands for superpowered intuition.
Okay. Okay. So in this book, you just talk about general ways that people can kind of start to tune into their intuition and how, like little practices that people can do. Because I feel like, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe it was just whatever, but I feel like I literally, as a child, was taught not to trust my instinct at all.
Yeah, I think that most of us are. Where I like to say it's institutionalized out of us between our community, our family, our community, our churches, our schools, academically, and business. In every respect, we're taught that that is a useless piece of information. And yet, for me, on a personal level, it's been the most valuable information I had because I was, as a real estate investor, it was just kicking in all the time. And then as I went on to be an intuitive instructor, traveling the country, once again, it was my intuition that was leading and guiding all the way. And both of those businesses became very successful because I was willing to listen.
Right. Right. And I know a lot of people they don't I think they don't trust it because they like you said they've been taught not to trust it. How do you trust yourself? Like how do you or do you just surrender and say I'm going to believe or listen or trust everything or is there a beginning kind of process to that because I know for a long time I would think something and then be like, oh, Tammy, you're just forget it. You're just overreacting. You're just thinking this. You're just doing this. And I would rationalize my way out of every single gut feeling I had.
Yeah, and I think that's normal for us to do that when we're not in practice of this. But the way that I teach my students and the way that I learned how is really to test it, to begin to test it, to document things. And we have exercises that you do where you ask a question, you listen for your intuitive impression to come through, and you document your answers. And after a time, once those answers become more prominently accurate than not, then you can begin to trust it. Now, in the beginning, I got no answers at all. So
Right.
that is normal. But eventually, I began to create what I would call a relationship kind of between that inner part of myself and the conscious mind that I normally work with in my waking state. And you have to cultivate that. That isn't always just readily available to you. You have to cultivate that friendship, that relationship, and that dialogue, like I said. But it's through the process of doing it and seeing the accuracy of it that you begin to develop confidence with it. And those should be things that are provable. And in the book, I go over in great detail the things that you can prove and the things that you can't prove. Because if it's always just speculative things and, oh, it could have been, maybe not, I like to do things that are black and white. So you know for sure if you got it or you didn't get it. So we work with absolutes so you can understand your percentage rate. It will never be 100%
Right.
accurate. That's
Right.
just not even, that's not normal. But you can get your accuracy rate up fairly high. And after a time, you will begin to trust that information that comes in almost more than your conscious logic impressions because it is so strong. It can be
Right.
very strong and be a wonderful guiding resource.
Well, I know like I used to practice and I think this was just my version of practice and I would meet someone and just kind of sit and see what kind of feeling I got and then I would go do research on them. Like I would meet some guy and I would be like, "Ooh, I got a really cringy feeling on that one." And then I would go like look him up and he'd have like all gross pictures and he was with rough people and I was just like, "Okay, that made sense." And so I did it with people. Like I could literally when I met someone, I mean, that was just me. I was very easy for me to either get a like warm, fuzzy feeling or a cringy feeling, no matter what the interaction was right away. What are some other ways that you think people, like simple ways people could kind of test the process?
One of the things I request that people do in the courses that I teach is just write down a question before you go to sleep at night and see what your dream is the next day. If you
Mm,
document that question and answer period, you may have a dream about it, or it may be symbolic about whatever it is that you're talking about. But it begins to train your mind to see a deeper sense of yourself. But there's so many different ways. I mean, some people are auditory. They may have just a knowing or hearing of an answer. Some people are just experiential. I mean, it may be a synchronistic moment. I know for me personally, what I have observed anyway, and this is a type of intuition, is that when someone is either getting close to dying or a loved one of theirs, I may not have seen them for 5 or 10 years. I'll run into them at a store or in a restaurant or something, and I have an opportunity to have a chat with them, and then I find out within a month or two that some of their husband wife may have passed, or they may have passed, and it's like I have this kind of synchronistic opportunity to sort of say goodbye, I feel like. So
mm,
those are synchronistic moments. Those are intuitive moments as well. But also some people are very visual. They will dream. They will get something in a meditation potentially, and meditation is another good resource to be able to go inward and be able to get information. But those are all things that can help you to get closer to that state.
okay. And is there any methods that are like more successful? Or I know one of the questions that we were talking about or that you had mentioned was ways that are successful to become intuitive.
I think you have to identify what that person's strengths are. And that's one of the things that we begin to do in the SPY Human Development Program, is to begin to understand what your communication style is and what your assets are, to be able to understand how you can most benefit from this. And there again, like I said, it's sometimes it's meditating and listening for an answer, sometimes it's visualizing, just allowing a vision to come in. For some people, it's in their dream state. For other people, I used to get so many what I call downloads intuitively when I was just driving in a car.
Yeah.
It's a very mellow time. You're just passing through, maybe long drive in a car, going through the countryside or something. And all of a sudden there would be this impression, this intuitive impression would just kind of pop in. And many, many times, and that has happened to me, but not only has it happened to me many times, it almost always was about my real estate business. So it was
Mm,
like, oh, this is here. Go check this out because it's available. And it's like, wow, okay. So then the next day I would have to, start trying to find, where is this? Where can I go?
right.
And then there it would be, and I would find it. And it's like, I might have missed that completely had I not had that, intuitive download.
I laugh because sometimes I get like I call them my epiphanies, and they come to me when I'm in the shower. Like I'll be sitting there shampooing, and all of a sudden I'll be like, I'll visualize like a course or something that I'm like, and then all of a sudden like the whole day is wrapped around. Okay, what does this even mean? And for some reason, it's the shower though, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just my peaceful time, you know?
Yeah,
I
I,
get
I think anytime that we get into that sort of la state, that a relaxed state of mind, it's a lot like just before we drop off to sleep. We're in a different brainwave state. And in that state of mind, it's very easy for our subconscious mind and conscious mind to communicate with one another. It's easy to get those downloads.
right, right. Now, if people are out there listening, and I know they are, and they're questioning, am I highly intuitive, or how did you know? Like, how did
Well,
you know you were?
I had some early things that happened, but I really didn't respect those much. It was one of those things, oh, was it not? Didn't really know how all of that worked. But then after a time, I began to realize, okay, this is beyond what I would consider just normal. It was like there was something going on. So I took a course and I learned how to do that deeper portion, and there was a long period of time, 6 months to a year, of just doing these exercises of mental exercises with, focus, concentration, memory, meditation, that sort of thing, where I could began to understand that my mind could communicate to me. And it took a while for that to happen, and it took even longer to really prove that that information was correct. But eventually, it was so prominent and so accurate in so many ways that I really started respecting it. And everything I learned, I usually like to help others learn the same. And if I experience success, I want other people to experience the same success that I have. So I started teaching it and traveling the country and talking to universities. And one of my specialties was being able to see the mind body relationship. So I did a lot of lectures with nurses and doctors and things like that at medical institutions across the country. And then just spiritual centers and women's retreats and all sorts of things. So it really grew into a very prominent business after a time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know, like I said, I know a lot of people they don't trust that intuition at all. So that's why I'm trying to kind of prompt, things that they can do to question that. And I guess what I'm taking from that is the very first step is literally being ultra aware of what your body is telling you. If you get
Yes.
that, I call them that gut punch, if somebody says something and it's just, oh, like there's a reason, and it might be that person, it could be something totally different, but like you said, journal it and think about it and really reflect on it, because that is your intuition. Your body has a physiological response to every single thing every emotion, there is a physical response. And whether it's from your subconscious mind or from your conscious mind, doesn't matter. You can't fight those responses.
That's so true. And I think documenting it is so vital. And the reason for that is I can go back even in my own journals, even from the earlier years when I started this, but I can go back and read my journals and like, oh, I forgot that happened. Oh yeah, that did occur. It was, I remember teaching this class early on, when once I had developed this, and it was so interesting because we were looking at one another's future just for that week, just little things that happened that week. And we did it in a manner that no one knew what everyone was getting. No one knew what other people were getting for them, but everyone did, every person in the class. There were maybe 10 of us in the class, something like that. And then we would come back to class the next week. We'd open up the envelopes and we would see if any of those things happened. Well, people were getting the most fun things. It's like, oh, I see a bee in the kitchen on Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock or something like that, and ask that person if that did happen. And sure enough, yes, a bee was in my kitchen at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, things like that. So it's when you can actually get verifiable information, and you have to be honest about that. We did require everyone be honest, not just say, oh yeah, that was correct when it wasn't. Because what we're learning was the accuracy rate, how to do it. What does it feel like when you do it? How does your body feel when you are doing this correctly? For me, I'm very auditory. And what I begin to notice is if I verbalize something, and it was an intuitive impression, if I would verbalize it, I would get a sensation in my body if that was truth or if it was false. And if it was false, it was like trying to describe a color and using the entire wrong definition of what a color looks like. But if it was correct, then you feel like it's settled, it's done. It's just a good feeling inside, and there's a truthfulness to that. And I began to understand I could get yes, no answers correctly by just stating it out loud and listening to what my body said to me.
So that sounds very much like when people muscle test.
Yeah, yeah. That's
They,
another way. I mean, that's still your body speaking to you. It's mine. For me, it was just feeling in my body. For a lot of people, they muscle test and get it that way. Yes.
yeah, and it's for the people that haven't heard of muscle testing. It's very interesting, and you can Google it and look it up and everything. But it is kind of truths, and you're standing there, and I show people all the time with just my name is Tammy, and if it's my name's Tammy, you're going to lean forward. If it's not, you're going to lean back. But I have met people, and I think she just a couple episodes ago, and literally when I said, "How did you heal from trauma, and how did you heal all of your things?" She literally did muscle testing on absolutely everything in her life. And it was, and that's what she called. She was like, that was my inside truth. And I trusted it. Once I learned to trust it, things changed.
Yes. Yes, I know a lot of people who do muscle testing, and I do it a little, but I've learned a different method, but that's very valid.
Yep. I do it actually with like supplements and medicines and different things like that. And I've learned to trust it. So I can pick up a vial of cinnamon that I'm not even looking at. I can have 100 bottles of stuff, put cinnamon up here and be like, is this for my good? And I will like flip backwards and I'm allergic to cinnamon and I don't know I'm holding the cinnamon. So it's really interesting. So I love it. I love the whole intuitive. So if people are more interested and they want to like, is your program, your spy program, is that a beginner program?
I have different levels. If you get the entire spy program, that takes you from beginning stages all the way through. But I do a lot of workshops that are just quick start workshops. Some people don't want to spend a lot of time doing this, but they just want to have a little jump start, kind of get down the road. So I do a lot of workshops. Those can be found when I'm presenting those on my website at lindaeastburn.com. They can also, find me just on Facebook. They can find me on Instagram. You can also just email me. I'm always open to get an email just at lindaeastburn@gmail.com. So I'm available for sure.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. What is the best place to reach you? And it sounds like you just told us. I will
Yeah.
put all of those in the show notes, of course, as well. So what is your suggestion for people, like I said, just starting out, besides listening to your body? Is it more podcasts? Is it taking a course? I mean, because I know people are really curious. People have been told for so, so long to just not listen to their gut, to ignore it, to suck it up. It's not that bad. Or, I look at little kids when you tell a little kid, to hug somebody that they don't know, and their body, sometimes they'll hug them and sometimes their body will literally freeze and you're forced to do it anyway. And I look back at that and I think at times even when I was little and I'm like, there was a reason, like that person skeeved me for whatever reason, but you're not allowed to be like, no, I don't want to touch that person. So, I guess what are some last tips or tricks or a couple more, just maybe one more thing that they can try to do?
Well, I think that the beginning stages, whether you pick up a book and read it, watch a YouTube video on the subject, or just talk to friends about it, either way. I think you can take the course, but you have to be rather committed to take the course. So be ready before you take the course. So reading a book sometimes is a good starting point. Any kind of book that seems to draw you in, or that you feel that you would enjoy reading. I think that is a good starting place for you. If you're a little bit farther down the road though, and you're ready to take a course, I would find some course that gives you some simple steps to be able to start the process. It's You can't jump into the deep end of the pool until you're ready. So it's a progression. Also, I would monitor your own inner responses as you are beginning to pick this up, because you may have some programming there from the past that says, oh, this is wrong. There was a woman I know that was doing some fabulous remote viewing, which is a rather extensive form of doing the intuitive work. She was doing a remote viewing, and she was part of this very broad project. And she didn't know what the project was for, but she was getting yes, no answers for them, and it ended up being very correct. Then she found out that they were doing this and even though they weren't putting money on this, they were just doing it as an experimental thing. They were doing it with horse racing. Well, she had some kind of a blockage from her early life that somehow gambling was wrong. And even though they weren't gambling on the horses, she still got this blockage, and she could never again do remote viewing. So I think
Wow.
we really do have to start with our own belief systems, what we feel comfortable with, what's going to stand in our way, and what will allow us to actually move forward with this. So in my SPY program, the very first chapter is understanding the box you are in and what you've been programmed to believe, and what you want to hold on to and what you want to let go of in your belief system, so you truly can go forward with this and be able to utilize it in the most positive way.
I was going to say, because you want it to be positive. I mean, what are the benefits of being more intuitive if you had to give a couple?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a good warning system. I've known
Yes.
many people that avoided coming up on a wreck because they were told not to. People who didn't get on that airplane, and the airplane had problems, or didn't make it to their destination or whatever. I know many people who avoided that relationship because they knew it wasn't going to be good for them. There's so many places, but for each one of those warnings, what I do is, in the SPY technique, is really about seeing opportunities. And I'll give you a quick example of one. I was working with a woman, and she wasn't local, but I knew her well. And she was 40 years of age. She had never been married, and she was asking me, do you see anyone in my future? And what I saw, just looking intuitively at her future, I saw a gentleman, and I described him, his physique, what he did for a living. He was in the computer field, and that he was in close proximity to her often, but they'd never met. So, that was a clue. The next thing I saw was that he lived exactly 10 miles from her home, and he lived in a grove of trees, which was quite unusual because it was a desert area and there were no groves of trees much in that area. A few months later, a few weeks later, something like that, she joined a ballroom dance class, and she met a gentleman, fit the physique, and he was in the computer field, but so many people are, it could have been anyone. But she found out that his sister lived right across the street from the school where she taught, and every Wednesday he would go visit his sister and have dinner with her. So he was in close proximity to her often, but they'd never met. When they started dating, and she finally ended up at his home, it was exactly 10 miles due south of her house, and it was in a grove of trees. So those are the types of specifics one can get. And would they have met anyway? Possibly they would have, but as it turned out, she was pretty confident that this was the person for her, and they eventually got married and are still happily married today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great. So it's like, it can be a warning thing, it could be a good thing. And do you caution people to kind of take it with a grain of salt and don't act from it all the time?
You have to verify it. And that's just one of the reasons I teach people to get their accuracy rate. I have around an 85% accuracy rate, but because I have a 15% non-accuracy rate with my intuition, I always, join it together with research, logic, reasoning, and put those two worlds together. I'm a real estate investor. That's seriously, numbers game. You know, it's a
Right.
matter of knowing what the value of property is, when to buy, when to sell, that sort of thing. Now, my intuition is extremely strong in real estate, but I can say that I'm always going to know the numbers as well. I'm
Right.
not going to rely on just one side or the other.
Right. That makes total sense. Well, this has been super fun, Linda. And I am sure people are getting a lot and they're going to go out and they're going to do research and hopefully look you up and see what you offer and even just a beginner starter or something. Because I feel like there's so much controversy and now we're in more of an intuitive world. Like that's, energy healing and all of that stuff is kind of more out in the forefront now and people are talking about it and people are questioning and obviously as a religious thing, some people are skeptical, and that is just it's just all learning. It's just knowledge. So if you could give the people one last tip, trick, or something tangible to take with them to make their day a little brighter today, what would it be?
Trust yourself today. Listen and trust. You know so much more than you're giving yourself credit for.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for coming, Linda. I appreciate it.
Thank you for
And
having
for
me.
You're very welcome. For everybody else out there listening, you heard it. Trust that. When you feel something, trust it. It is called a gut instinct. And like we said, it is a physiological response to something. So listen to your body, trust your body, and love your body because you are absolutely amazing. Thank you all, and we will see you next week.
That was great.